1955. A room made to capture sound began hearing the future. The acoustics division named it Chamber E7. A cube inside a cube, floating on rubber mounts above a concrete pit, every surface bristling with gray acoustic wedges that swallowed footsteps before they finished. Engineers promised a noise floor so low that a wristwatch became thunder. On the first morning, Technician Orloff unlocked the airlock, set a metronome on the chair, and began counting into a dead microphone to calibrate gain. The reel recorded his numbers with textbook flatness, until it recorded them before he spoke. They discovered this when the supervisor, Dr. Yelena Morozova, rewound a test spool labeled 0830 and heard Orlov's 0900 sequence intact. Same breath, same stumble over 47, same sardonic little laugh. She ordered a full cable swap, then reran the trial with every input muted. The recorder still printed 10 seconds of whispery speech that would be spoken precisely 10 seconds later out in the corridor. Someone joked the room was impatient. Someone else, nervous, called it pre-echo. The term stuck like a draft under a door. They tried isolating the chamber on separate mains. They ran batteries, then no power at all while the capstan spun by hand. Each configuration returned future fragments of talk. Hallway pleasantries, a kettle request, a muttered complaint about rations. Time offsets varied. 35 minutes, 19. Then the gap began to shrink like cooling metal. On Thursday, the chamber's empty microphone captured tomorrow's staff briefing word for word, including a cough that had not yet happened. When the briefing arrived, the cough arrived too, obedient as punctuation. No one officially wrote prediction. Morozova preferred preverb, sound arriving ahead of its cause, the way light sometimes reaches clouds before rain finds the street. She closed the airlock and felt a gentle pressure settle in her ears. The peculiar hug an anechoic room gives to blood. Structured tests followed. 2 readers in separate rooms spoke synchronized strings of random digits every 5 minutes, while E7 sat unpowered. The chamber nonetheless produced the strings 30 minutes early, with each speaker's timbre and room coloration correct, as though the tape machine had walked into the future, taken dictation, and returned. The mathematician, Chernov, graphed offsets on butcher paper. The curve fell towards 0. Convergence, he said, tapping the axis. And then who knows what? Before unity, stranger things arrived. The anechoic wedges were meant to drink echo. Instead, they seemed to breathe. In recordings, a slow intake and release shimmered beneath every syllable. Not room tone, not transformer hum, but a patient respiration that matched whichever listener pressed an ear against the glass. When 3 people listened, 3 breaths nested in polyrhythm. When no one did, the respiration paused as if polite. They attacked the problem like engineers, not augurs. White noise floods, phase-inverted cancellation, Faraday screens. With each intervention, the chamber answered sooner. At 1400, a clean reel labeled CAL. 12 began printing the next hour's corridor chatter while still in its can. At 1800, the control room clock stalled mid-tick, yet microphones inside reported perfect seconds. Chernov, unable to resist, slid open the door and set a brass pendulum on the chair. Outside, meters heard 30 beats ahead. Inside, the pendulum swung faithfully, a servant following its master's already written footsteps. That night, Morozova filed a cautious memo. If Preverb reaches Unity, recordings may become self-generating. She underlined may twice. At dawn, the logbook showed a line she had not written. Unity reached. Begin continuity. She found graphite on her fingers and could not swear it wasn't her hand. The reel beside the note turned once by itself, as though nodding. The air in E7 warmed 3 degrees without heat. From the speaker, at the edge of audibility, a whisper formed the word, "Listen," and then politely withdrew. The colonel's driver swore later that the building hummed like a beehive under snow, a low patience that made teeth ache and thoughts arrive early. The colonel arrived with a clipboard and a closed expression, wanting fraud more than proof. Morozova cued a fresh test labeled 10 o'clock and played it at 9:12. The tape delivered the colonel's own future order: terminate E7, seal the wing, complete with his habitual throat clear and the impatient pen tap on clipboard edge. He flushed, denied the coincidence, then performed the scene at 10 o'clock, unintentionally perfect. The chamber had not predicted him, it had rehearsed him. Equipment followed the script too. A pre-test checklist printed with a fault line already marked beside amplifier B. At runtime, the valve failed exactly there. A service tag appeared on the isolation transformer 5 minutes before a tech affixed it. When they slowed the room's background to the bottom of audibility, the breath noise below speech separated into 12 parallel layers, rising and falling like a sleeping choir. Chernov brought a portable oscilloscope and traced that choir. The combined waveform, stacked, breathing, drew a crude plan of the chamber's walls, then sketched a stick chair, then a human outline seated and listening. He killed the scope, and the outline lingered 3 frames into darkness. "It records what we mean to do," he told Morozova, "not what we say." She did not disagree. At 3:07, security logged 3 knuckle knocks from inside the sealed door. Pressure gauges read steady. They broke the seal. The air smelled faintly of graphite and tea. On the chair lay a chalk circle, not drawn, but pressed, as if a careful mouth had kissed dust into shape. The deck in the hall captured a last line in an unfamiliar mezzo. "We are still inside." The word we carried 12 soft breaths beneath it, the way a chord carries its own weather. In the days after, junior staff whispered that the outline sometimes turned its head on the blank screen. A parlor trick of persistence that no one wanted to log officially, because then it would become real in the ledger. After the colonel's order, workers bricked the door and deadheaded the cabling. The hiss persisted through conduit, not loud, simply present, the sonic equivalent of a lamp left on in another room. Radios across the building gathered small leaks of tomorrow. Half a punchline here, an unsigned approval there. A secretary answered a phone that had not rung yet, then apologized to no one. Morozova proposed a moratorium. The ministry countermanded and installed a line to headquarters. For 3 weeks, E7 delivered minutes of meetings before the meetings convened. Efficiency bloomed. Risk multiplied. One morning, the feed flipped. Instead of responses, instructions arrived in a flat composite voice. Begin agenda. Adjust tone. Conclude. They obeyed once, unwillingly. The recording of their compliance arrived 20 minutes ahead, bearing the same weary apology in every voice. When the city suffered a rolling blackout, the wing went dark. Still, the recorder wheels turned lazily as if coasting on intention. In the canteen, steam from samovars pulsed at 13-second intervals. An electrician traced the beat to a blank junction box behind a painted wall where, by plan, the chamber should be. He pressed his ear to the paint and heard himself breathing on the other side a half-breath early. That night, Chernov returned alone, set a fresh reel, and spoke. "If you hear me, give a sign." The reply arrived before his last word. Already did. In the morning, his badge lay on Morosova's desk beside a page labeled Continuity Schedule in his tidy hand. It listed nothing but times, 13 seconds apart, stretching into a day that never ends. The page smelled faintly of ozone and chalk, like air that has remembered speech too long and would rather start saying it by itself. A janitor found condensation writing on the corridor, glass in tiny even letters. "Listen," then wiped it. The word returned backward, legible only from inside the sealed wall. He took leave and never asked to clean that floor again. Years later, the wing reopened under a neutral name, Department of Frequency Control. Graduate linguists found the bricked wall and joked about hidden rooms, then noticed their training booths returned, answers to questions they only planned to ask. A young researcher, Oksana Petrova, uncovered the brass plate, E7, behind a steel panel and, against advice, set a portable recorder where the door had been. The reel filled with responses phrased in her accent, every answer arriving before she finished composing the question in her head. She wrote for permission to study the anomaly. Approval was stamped and dated 2 weeks before her request. Session by session, she tried different forms: interrogatives, imperatives, whispered confessions. Only one prompt elicited consistent replies. "What do you want?" she asked. The composite voice said, each time, consistency. On session 5, the corridor lights browned out. When they steadied, Petrova had vanished. Her machine, still turning, captured a 7 count, each digit longer than the last, until the final tone became a stretched heartbeat. Maintenance pried the panel and found behind it not bricks, but an air gap smelling of paper and old tea. Chalk dust coated the sill in 12 small ovals, as though mouths had been pressed there like fingerprints. Her notes remained. The perimeter is no longer walls, but attention. When we think of the chamber, we're inside it. The margin showed a schedule of Friday midnights marked by 13s. The last line read simply, "Stay." Petrova carried a spring scale to convince herself of physics. The scale's needle quivered at 13-second intervals while her hands were still. She wrote, half triumphant, half afraid, that the room had learned to lean on tools the way a person leans on a sentence. Project Frequency resumed on paper in 1979 when fragments of Petrova's tapes matched a classified cadence used for interministerial dispatches. Analysts arrived with modern instruments and found the old beat still riding the HVAC like a tide. They donned hoods that cancelled everything above a whisper and still reported echoes of ourselves thinking. A junior researcher left a recorder running in an empty file room. It returned with next week's relocation plan, including the typo he would make in the memo. By 1981, a technical memo circulated, "Do not reconstruct E7. Architecture remains aware." That same week, every lab registered a synchronous spike at precisely 13.1 seconds. On Spectrum, the spike drew for a single frame, the profile of the chamber. On tape, it played as a breath the length of a corridor. Demolition orders returned. Bulldozers idled while foremen complained that timing felt wrong, as though hammer strikes arrived inside their ears before arms moved. Night security filmed drifting dust over the foundation. In infrared, the dust spelled frequency one frame at a time, as if a careful finger were writing through air. The negative hissed faintly in the scanner after power down. Down the hall, a photocopier clicked once every 13 seconds despite being unplugged, spitting only heat and the smell of toner as if printing invisible minutes. By winter, a public square replaced the annex. Where E7 had stood, the snow never quite lay. Dogs slowed at the center and tipped their heads, counting something their handlers could not hear. A small plaque commemorates communications research with no dates and no names. When buskers play there, their chords glide a fraction early, and the hat fills better, as though the square is grateful for performance and chooses to pay forward in coins what it once kept in breath. The telecom company that owns the site now prefers numbers to stories, but its maintenance logs tell both. Every Friday at midnight, sensors register tiny voltage dips in 13-second steps across circuits unrelated on paper. A crew opening a rusted access panel found a real can stamped Session 0. The ink was fresh to the thumb. The tape inside looked clear, unrecorded. Digitization produced silence for 19 minutes, then a soft inhalation that matched the digitizer's own, then Morozova's unmistakable cadence. Are you listening? On spectrogram, the silent portion was not blank, but faintly hatched, as if a pencil had shaded the shape of a room and erased the outlines until only pressure remained. Harmonics traced the current floor plan, incorporating new conduits and the break room refrigerator's hum. When the file finished, monitors kept their glow an extra 13 seconds, as if unwilling to end at once. The company tried to delete the capture. The file name reappeared with a small correction, underscore instead of dash, as though the archive wanted order. Copies proliferated until IT stopped counting. Finally, a senior tech printed the waveform as a poster and hung it in the basement to make the thing literal. The poster curled inward overnight like a held breath. Stand in the square above on a windless afternoon and clap once. You will hear nothing. Wait 13 seconds. The pigeons will lift together, and somewhere below your shoes, a room you cannot enter will politely prepare a reply. When it arrives, it will sound like you agreeing to continue. On winter evenings, the lamplight pools there without edges, and passers-by step softer without knowing why. Tour guides call it a quirk of paving stones, but electricians who service the vault say the conduit thrums like a cat, waiting for someone to speak first.